Welcome to In Our Generation. It is November 30th of 2020. We are at the end of November, and welcome with us. If you have not subscribed to our channel, you should do so. That way you might be notified when we release new videos. We do this program, try to do it on a daily basis, where we go through some of the news that I find interesting and talk about what I find interesting about it. And then I also do a weekly podcast where we get interviews with different people, both people you've never heard of and other people you probably also have never heard of, because anyone you have heard of isn't interested in talking to me. But we do a weekly one called the Freeborn Podcast, and you can go back and look at previous episodes. I think we've done about 40 of those. And then we also publish the sermons and teachings from the church. I also do some Bible studies videos if you're interested in scriptural ones. I know some of you might have tuned into this because it says it has a Christian worldview, and you assumed that meant that I was going to be talking about the Bible. But that isn't what that means. It means I'm going to talk about the news from a Christian perspective, not necessarily quoting scripture. But if you are interested in scriptural analysis and exegesis, then I would encourage you to look at the Romans series that I'm doing, where we are looking at Romans exegetically. And I think that would be profitable for you to look at if you're interested in that kind of a video or in that kind of content. All of those are on the same channel, so it's a one-stop shopping stop. So you can subscribe and click the little bell button, and you'll be notified when we release new videos, allegedly, although I've been told they don't always work. So you should also follow me on Twitter at Freeborn Podcast on Twitter, and I will post on Twitter when I release new videos, and that's probably a lot more certain that you'll receive those notifications than YouTube. For some reason, YouTube notifications don't work. I don't know if it has to do with some type of shadow banning, or they just simply have lousy technology. I don't know what it is, but anyways, you can follow me at Freeborn Podcast on Twitter, and I'm going to start advertising or start tweeting when I release new videos. So you can do that. Today, let's talk about a few items of news. Let's start off with the category of economic disaster for 1 trillion, please. So Denmark decided to cull, that is the technical term for slaughter, cull their mink population because of COVID. So we might want to call this category senseless economic disaster for 1 billion. Because of their fears of COVID, the state of Denmark, the entire country of Denmark decided they needed to kill off their entire mink population. For those that don't know, mink is an animal that is highly prized, highly valued for its fur. And apparently Denmark is a huge producer of mink fur, which are used to make mink coats. And they slaughtered 17 million mink, most healthy, because they were afraid of the COVID breakouts on the mink farms, apparently in the mink, and they were worried that they were going to end up with a strain of the virus that would be resistant to the future vaccine. And so they just destroyed their mink industry. Entire industry destroyed because of their fear of COVID. Now, they will either go down in history as the most prescient of all people, being able to predict and prognosticate what could happen from the COVID disease. And if COVID actually mutates and becomes this ravaging disease that kills off 40 or 50% of the population, but Denmark comes out of it unscathed or relatively unscathed, well, then we'll all be praising their foresight. But if COVID turns out to be like Y2K, largely a bust and not nearly what everyone thought it might be, then you're going to wonder why Denmark destroyed themselves. Did what none of their enemies have done to them before. They destroy their own economy out of fear. I don't know what it'll be. I know some of you are very convinced that this is all basically a scam and being used to subjugate and to enslave people to statism, whatever. I'm not convinced of any of that. I honestly don't know what's going to come of it. I'm not a prophet. I'm not the son of a prophet. I'm not a seer, and I don't have a seer stone. So I don't know what will happen. And it wouldn't be the first time that disease or viruses or epidemics, pandemics, have ravaged the world and killed off large portions of the world. And then everyone's wondering why no one did anything before that. But it also wouldn't be the first time that we feared something would happen that never came to pass. So they are certainly playing at the big boys table, and they are gambling with the big chips. And they are betting that this is going to be such a huge deal that in the end they are going to be praised by the entire world for their handling of the disease in Denmark. And so they have basically decided to go out of the mink business. Now the idea is that once COVID's over, then they will reseed it. They'll start, breeding mink again and try to rebuild that business. But that doesn't happen that easily. This to me is reminiscent of an analogous situation where during Prohibition in the United States, the U.S. government put out of business the beer breweries in the U.S. Now, alcohol still flowed, and there was a lot of illegal breweries set up, but these were not actual. These really couldn't be called breweries. It was just garbage alcohol as cheaply as it possibly could be made, because that's a problem when something is illegal. You get very poor quality of it. When it's legal, then you're going to have competition, and the competition will be based on customer service, price, and quality, not just one of those. It'll be all three. And as competition increases, all three become better for the consumer. But during Prohibition, because they put out legal competition, well, then the U.S., that had a very strong beer brewery industry and had leading technology in it, well, they got put out of business. And to this day, the beer brewery industry in the United States never did recover. They do, you have Budweiser and Coors and a number of beers that are produced, but none of these really reach the quality of the international competition in that. And so the U.S. put itself out of competition in that industry because of Prohibition. And that is what Denmark has decided to do because of COVID. They have decided that because of COVID, they are going to put themselves out of the mink industry. So that's a bold move by the government of Denmark. Very, very bold move. And so either they are going to be heroes, or they're going to be the worst thing that ever happened to Denmark since Hamlet. So we'll see. We will see what happens out of that. It'll be interesting to follow. In other news that was interesting to me, you had the assassination in the last couple of days of the Iranian nuclear scientist, the Iranian nuclear scientist. It's hard to sometimes, when you're speaking about Iran, it's hard to pronounce that word properly. But the leading Iranian nuclear scientist was assassinated. And there's a lot of outcry, especially obviously from Iran, but even from other parts in the world, particularly our Democratic friends, seem to be quite distraught, quite distraught, broken up, weeping in the streets practically for this Iranian intellectual. And when you hear it from their point of view or from their side, well, then you can obviously see why this would be so horrible, why this would be so terrible. Because when you have somebody who is an intellectual and he is a brilliant scientist and a leading scientist in his nation and perhaps even in the world, and somebody goes out and snuffs his life out, well, that certainly would be something to be concerned about. Now, whether or not, I mean, one way you can look at that is this was a peace-loving man who wanted to bring nuclear power to his nation so that he could free them from the turbulence of oil and oil dependence. Or you could listen to those who knew him best and how they described him in glowing terms, such as when his widow is reported by the same publication that laments his killing. His widow told those reporters that her husband had always wanted to die a martyr, and she was happy that he got his wish. Now, obviously, I'm not an intellectual, and I'm not a nuclear scientist. And so maybe that's how all nuclear scientists talk. Maybe that's how all intellectuals think. But I suspect that the average professor, the average nuclear scientist in a lab somewhere doesn't actually tell his widow or his wife and his family and his loved ones and his friends and anyone else who might want to listen that his goal in life, his ambition in life, is to be a martyr for jihad. I suspect that is indicative of extremism. I think that might be a good sign that whoever it is that took care of this person, that they got their information right. You know, it was tenuous at first. I wasn't sure. I read the article and I thought, well, you know, if they're going to go around killing anyone who does research in nuclear physics, well, we're going to have a hard time finding nuclear scientists. Until his widow says that in reality, she was very thankful and grateful for him being killed and assassinated like that because his goal was to die as a martyr. I think that if I were a nation employing nuclear scientists, I think one of the first things I would probably ask is if their ambition in life was to die as a martyr for a cause. I don't think I'd give them the keys to the nuclear silo. I don't think I'd put a big wad of plutonium in their hands if they were to tell me, my ambition in life is to die as a martyr. That's what I'm shooting for in life. I think that any sane state would relegate that person to the funny farm. I don't think they would give them a sane, peace-loving state. I don't think they would give them access to the nuclear material and nuclear research material and the equipment to weaponize plutonium. But that's just me, right? That's me. Obviously, the Democrats don't have a problem with that statement. The only type of fanaticism that Democrats seem to really have a distaste for is that of Christians who are willing to die for their faith, not kill, but to die for their faith if necessary, to win or save other people. Maybe that's what he was referring to. Maybe what he meant is that his ambition in life was one day to retire from nuclear physics and go work as a missionary, saving people from horrors, from sin, and from terrors, and possibly be put to death by evil people. Maybe that's what he meant. Or maybe what he meant was that he wanted to help a terrorist state come up with nuclear weapons and therefore avoid his own life. Maybe, right? Maybe. And in the last piece of news that I found interesting today will be a quick little video, but the last piece of news that I found interesting today was the news about Sarah Fuller. Now, many of you may have already seen this, although I suspect that a lot of the people that watch this program are watching this program because they are white knuckle abstaining from watching the NFL and college football and other sports because they see these sports to be evil because these people are dishonoring the flag or dishonoring the country, and so they're not watching the sports. And so you may not have heard it, right? If you're here watching this, it's likely because you have nothing else better to watch. And if that's the case, then you might not be aware of this historical news that a woman, a young lady by the name of Sarah Fuller from Vanderbilt University, became the first woman to take the field and field a snap for Power 5 SEC football. And she's a soccer player, apparently a very good. Apparently Vanderbilt, even though their football team by all measures is no good, apparently their women's soccer team is very good. And so I guess Vanderbilt figured that the men weren't doing so well, and so they fielded a woman on the team to be their kicker. And so Sarah Fuller became the first woman to play in Power 5 SEC football on the field. In fact, see here we have, there she is. That's Sarah Fuller in her uniform and ready to take the field. And she took the field today. We've got some footage of this. You can watch this. Let's see.
Awesome moment. You can hear the crowd. Everybody understands what's happening right now. This is a pretty cool moment.
And the kick down at the 35-yard line, and Sarah Fuller. Happy Thanksgiving. What a day. What a day.
So that was Sarah Fuller taking the field. And the kickoff, a lot of people were critical because it didn't go very far, but the coach said that he had called a squib kick, and it seems like that was accurate. Now, a lot of people are criticizing that they didn't have her go ahead and just do a full, a deep kick and show that she could really play with the big boys. But I just think that a lot of that might be sour grapes. I know there's a lot of people that think that women shouldn't be in men's sports because they can't compete at that level. And we could look at some of that, and there's probably some argument to be made. But so long as the government is not imposing a quota that they must be allowed to play or to have a certain number of women on the team, and each team is choosing to do so. Maybe you don't like the reasons. Maybe it's because of wokeness or social justice issues, and maybe you don't like that. But as long as it's the team's choice to do so, and they feel that she contributes either to the actual game or to the morale or to their mission or whatever it is they think she contributes, well, I'm fine with that. And I congratulate her. I'm sure that she was as happy to be on the field and have that opportunity as any one of you that probably could not have kicked the ball that far. So I'm sure her family were very proud of her and her loved ones were proud of her. So I congratulate her. Well done, Sarah. And, if a team wants to put me on the field and kick the football and I will get some time on the news to talk about it, I'd probably do it too. And I would probably not be nearly as good as she is. That young lady is 6'2", so she could probably kick me down the field. So good for her. And, people point out that what would have happened had she kicked it deep and had a run back, and she was the last person, as the kicker generally is, the safety, and had to tackle one of those fullbacks. And they kind of mocked that, she wouldn't be able to do that. But kickers aren't exactly known as being great tacklers in general, not just women. I mean, yeah, she would probably get seated on her can by one of those running backs, but a lot of kickers would. I went back and looked at some video. In fact, I have some here we can look at a little bit. So we can go in.
We are about to witness history in college football.
And here's some, I got some video here. And you look at,
Howell still on his feet. He's going to score. Yeah, watch right here. He's trying to do the right thing, but Earl Bennett coming in. He doesn't see him. That's a clean shot, but oh boy, that depleted him.
Goes on the kick return. Oh, and he just slams the kicker to the ground and steps out of bounds.
and there's more of that. You can see, I just downloaded a few clips, but it goes on and on and on, where these kickers just get seated on their cans by running backs who are much bigger and stronger than them. So I don't find that kickers are particularly great tacklers all the time. So I think that a lot of the criticisms leveled against Sarah are a little bit misogynistic, actually. So congratulations to Sarah for playing on a football team. And, you know, I remember watching that movie Unnecessary Roughness, and the girl in there did pretty well. That was probably Hollywood, right? But she did real well. So maybe girls can play football. We'll probably be seeing more of it. So those of you that are all irritated about it, you might want to get used to seeing it, because you're probably going to see a lot more of it. And yeah, they'll probably make rules to protect female kickers a little more, just like they have quarterbacks, right? And and speaking of quarterbacks, I don't know that they're always that great at tackling. I've seen some of them do just terrible tackles and get floored by these big guys. Anyways, so that's some of the news today. It was a slow news day, which is good. And, well, there were other news, but I'm tired of talking about the election. So we will leave it there. I thank you for being with me. It is November 30th of 2020. This is In Our Generation. If you haven't subscribed, do so. And I will see you, hopefully, tomorrow.